Okay, in this segment we're going to cover removing and installing the brake hose, part 2. Step number 1, we'll take our 12mm socket or wrench, whichever you happen to choose, and we're going to remove the fastener that holds this to the strut assembly. A little tip, you see me go through that pretty quickly. Sometimes you'll find out when you're ratcheting quickly that your ratchet is going forward and the socket's spinning back and forth but not doing anything. A little bit of pressure with your thumb or other finger on the socket itself will ensure that it doesn't free spin back and the ratchet's actually ratcheting in one direction. If there isn't much of a load on it, it'll have a tendency just to go back and forth with you. Once that's out, we just push it aside and pull that out of its bracket. Now, next step is when we want to break that 10mm fitting from the steel brake line that goes into the female end of the fitting on the brake hose. We want to break it free. Okay, now that it's broken free, I'm just going to go ahead and just lightly snug it, so just enough so it won't drip on me. The next step, we're going to remove that clip. And it can be a little bit tight in there. First I just grab it, wiggle it back and forth just a little bit, just to make sure it gets broken free. And I'm just trying to twist it sideways so I can get a grip on it, and it just snaps right out. The clip looks like so. It's kind of a horseshoe shaped design. This hose comes up, slips into a bracket, and this clip goes across the top, and that locks this brake hose to the bracket and holds it in position for the steel brake line to fit in. So there's the clip for it. We'll want to set it aside. The next step is we'll go ahead and loosen up that upper fitting. Once you break it free, you should be able to spin it freely with your fingers. And you want to spin it all the way around until the brake hose will pull down through that bracket freely. And the fitting on the brake line will spin around, and once you can remove that freely, you know you've got the hose off. I'm going to go ahead and turn the hose upside down now so it can drain into the pan. Next step, and this is the part where we want to be diligent about it and stay focused. We're using a 14mm, put on the Banjo fitting. We want to break that free, and it's going to be pretty tight. I use a snapping motion of my hand. Be careful when you're doing that. You don't want to injure your hand or fingers. Got a lot of calluses built up over the years, and we want to, as quickly as possible, remove that. See how I'm riding one finger on the socket, and that keeps it from spinning backwards. Now as I disassemble, I'll show you. It's hard to see. This Banjo fitting has been squished to a point where it's retaining on the threads a little bit, so I got to kind of walk it around with my fingers just like I'm unscrewing a nut. And basically, you'll have one fitting. This is called a Banjo fitting. It's a bolt with a hole through it. The fluid comes up, comes out the side through a hole and into the fitting, and there'll be another seal up here right next to the nut. So washer, nut, and another washer. This is our old hose. I'm going to use my new seals quickly at this time. As you can see in the background, my brake line is constantly dripping, losing fluid from the master cylinder. With approximately somewhere in the neighborhood of 8 to 10 ounces in the master cylinder at that drip rate, I've got a little bit of time to work with. But you want to keep it in your mind at all times. Go ahead and clean that Banjo fitting thoroughly, removing any dirt, foreign materials, or obstacles off it. Get both of the old washers off of it. Okay, that should conclude. Now that we've got the hose removed, our next procedure is getting this new hose on. So our next segment will cover installing the brake hose on the passenger side.